This is Davy White, punctuating your mind. Okay, so let's start looking at this question. I heard Liam talking to somebody about the phrase narrative perspective. That's someone. That's what I heard. It's trying to cover you there. What does narrative perspective mean?
Point of view.
So it's the point of view, it's the narrator's point of view. So who's the narrator? Whose point of view are we hearing? Balram's. So even though it's in letters, it's his point of view that we see. Tell me about that point of view. What life perspective is it from? Rich person, poor person? A poor person's. Okay, so it's really from the perspective of a life of poverty. Okay? All right. When we've looked at essay questions before, what have I taught you about some key words, especially verbs, that tell you which way to go? Pat?
Like, verbs that might imply something.
So verbs that might imply something. Good. So what, is there something up here? No, here. Forget the quote, we're looking here. Yep.
When I looked at explored, I was thinking of like acknowledging in depth, but then I thought scrutinise would be better.
Good. Scrutinise is...
Ooh, damn.
Legal studies.
That's a good word. Okay. Is there... Yes?
Subjugation.
Subjugation, is that a verb?
Verbs are
Verbs are action words?
a doing word, right?
Yes?
Allows?
Okay, but think about which verb is telling you what type of essay you should be writing. No? Now you're just throwing out all the words. Okay, if I'm going to say it is, has created, I want you to work out why I've said that's important. Can you please quickly talk to the person next to you and work out why this is important? Think about what we learned for Adiga and how is it similar?
Oh.
So what should you be focusing on?
The lives.
So what does this phrase tell you, has created? What does this tell you you have to focus on in your essay? What are you saying? Who's done what, how? So one of you speak. Okay, start with Nick, then Liam. Go.
Like you said, like what he's done, like the implied meaning.
So what's who's done? Adiga. Good. What were you going to say?
I was going to say how he's done it.
So how he's done something. Okay, so what we're really talking about is actually Adiga's authorial choices. So he has made choices as an author. This is not Adiga's real life. He hasn't said, I'm going to tell my my story, my life story, and tell it. And so all I have to do is relive my life. He has invented all of this, yes? Yes, that's what he told the cops. He's invented someone called Balram. He's invented all these things, yes? Okay. What is the topic? Subjugation. So it is asking you to talk about subjugation. Is it asking you to talk about anything else? No, not literally. So when we say we look at our essay questions, we have literal and we have implied. So the literal answer is that Adiga has made some author's choices. He's made some choices to create a character called Balram, who's going to be our narrator. Yes? And that narrator shows that there's subjugation in India and allows this scrutiny to happen. Okay? But, and I'm really glad that Lydia gave us this word scrutiny. Because explored, we're saying scrutiny is good. And this is where we launch into the implied. Yes? Because when we scrutinise subjugation, what do we actually do if we're scrutinising? We say, we evaluate what is subjugation, but also then,
It's like the pros and cons of it.
yeah, the pros and cons of it, why it's happened, what it's causing, does something need to change, is there something we should leave behind? It's a full evaluation, yes? And so then we might go, it's actually bad, it's caused by X, Y, Z, and it's these caused by X, Y, Z's that becomes our implied meaning, yes? Okay, so we said subjugation, was that just poor people? We had a whole mind map? No. We said it's rich to poor, yes? But it's rich to rich, and it's also poor to poor. And so suddenly, how all of that happens, why does this happen? Because if it was as simple as just rich to poor, we would go, and that's just caused by the caste system done. And the rich people are just too greedy, and they're mean and nasty, and no one who's poor can get anywhere else. But it's also rich to rich and poor to poor. So what is Adiga showing us? What's his message? Yes?
They do it to themselves.
They're doing it to themselves?
Is it like,
But why are they doing it to themselves?
The society itself.
What about the society itself that's causing them to do it to themselves? Okay, so they've got certain expectations of what success is. And tell me about this expectation.
Only light people can be in the light, and only dark people can be in the dark, and therefore their actions interfere.
Yes, that's part of it.
I
What
think
else have
about,
we
like,
said?
Their viewpoints are like greatly influenced by like Britain.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep, they do it to themselves. They're in a rooster coop.
Yeah, like even though Britain have left, they still choose to live in a way.
Yep, they are still bound to British expectations. Yes? If we think of those 5 steps for our intro, steps 4 and 5, 4 is the overall perspective of Adiga and 5 is the answer to the question. 4 is a little bit hinting of the implied answer, really, isn't it? Because if this idea of they're stuck in this old way of thinking, this British way of thinking, and they've got to get past that, is that Adiga's overall thing he wants to happen?
No, I don't really. I would say like at the start, I reckon maybe because he was in a lower situation. But then once he became an entrepreneur and he.
Oh, you're talking about Balram. I'm talking about Adiga, the author.
Oh, Adiga came up.
What does Adiga want the Indian people to see about themselves?
That they can all be successful in their education.
Yes. Adiga wants the Indian people to see they could all be more successful without subjugating other people. That if they as a whole country were together, they could be successful against Western people. Yes? Remember how he keeps saying, it's time for the brown and the yellow man. Brown, yellow, brown, yellow. Keeps calling out brown, yellow. Yes? Let's stop the white man. The white man's too busy doing this, but the brown man's too busy subjugating each other. Is what he's implying. Yes? All right. What I would like you to do is to quickly remind yourselves of the steps to an introduction. I keep reminding you there's 5 basic steps. What are those 5 basic steps? So background, which is context, a bit of the plot, that sort of stuff. Textual details. Next.
Like our interpretation of the.
No.
the audience,
Audience.
I swear there's one
the message, the message.
Yeah. Overall. There.
Message. knowledge, and then the last one will be the answer.
And the last one is the answer or your interpretation of the question. There are 5 steps. Now remember, steps 1 to 4, you can practice over and over and again without an essay question. The background will never change. This book for the exam won't suddenly be set in Iceland. Okay? It's always going to have been in India. It's always going to have all those Indian things happened to it. It's always going to have been written by Adiga. It's always going to have been called the White Tiger. None of this will change. This will change, the question, but nothing else will change. So you can really work on this. Now we think of Medea, our background, some people chose to write it was written initially for the Dionysian festival, yes? Some people chose to write it was written amid the Peloponnesian War. Some people decide to write that it was an ancient great Greek tragedy by the great playwright Euripides, whatever, yes? They're all perfectly fine. Everyone had different ways. Talk about the context. Alright? How about the plot? Some people said it was a tale of tragic love between rah-rah. Some people said it was a murderous revenge plot of da-da. They had different statements to say to summarize these things. Because this is not 4 or 5 sentences. It's really little half sentences.
So something I meant to ask way back then.
Yeah.
The Peloponnesian War, is there any evidence of that affecting the play?
I don't think so.
There's one line, like, something about sending them up against the enemy.
Yeah.
Other than that,
I think it's more about that they hero worship and that they... Because the thing is, that's why sons were so revered. That's because they're the soldiers.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's about they had to... So probably the biggest thing is about having soldiers, so the sons. Yeah. And that was the strength in that society. Yeah. Okay, yes?
With the overall message, how can it... I don't understand how the message can be...
Yeah.
Anyway, why would it be the same for every topic?
Because this is his purpose for writing the text. He wanted people to know this issue. And these two go together. Okay? So when he thought, you know, when I go to India, what I know about India, this is what I think of India, and I'm going to have my novel show them. I want the Indian people to know this about India. Okay? But then we ask a specific... This question could say, Balram and Pinky Madam had the most important relationship in the whole text. That could be a question. That's got nothing to do with what Adiga was thinking at the time. Okay? And we are interpreting what we think happened there. Okay? Alright. So I'm going to write some notes on the board in a minute. While I'm doing that, I would like you to have a chat about what are some of the words and phrases you could be using for some of these things here. How could we summarize some of that context? What could we be saying? What are some keywords from our word list that might fit some of these areas? Okay? All right, off you go. All right, so this is going back to the essay question, these notes over here. And like I said, you can come and take a picture of them in a minute, but I want to take you back to the essay question. And we're thinking the literal answer could be simply that yes, Adiga has made the choice to just create a narrator, a narrative perspective that shows us this. But my question to you, is it just the actual narrator who shows the subjugation?
No.
Or is it the experiences that he has? And the world that has been created by Adiga. It is the world too, because you think he needed a character who was subjugated. Now, if he had Balram who was subjugated and most of those experiences didn't occur, our idea, which is not the idea he said, but it would be the idea that only poor people are subjugated. Which we may have gone into the text thinking that. Rich people subjugate poor people, done. The rich people are horrible. But Adiga shows us that the rich people are also have issues, yes? But if he only had a rich people, so he was from Ashok's point of view, he was subjugating Balram, but he may not have realised he was being subjugated by other people. he really needs someone like Balram who was subjugated, who then could have the experiences that allowed him to recognize. It's the recognizing that others were too. Yes? Because not everybody recognizes they were subjugated, because the rooster coop. Remember how we talked about the rooster coop? What do the chickens do when they're out? They're free. Do they run away? They go home.
Yeah.
They go home to the rooster coop. So the whole idea of rooster coop is that people don't recognize that they're subjugated. So we go back to here. That allows the subjugation to be explored. So some of this problem is that people don't recognize it. Now someone like Ashok or Mukesh or the stork, they recognize the subjugation in that, yeah, we're subjugating the poor people. Yes? Balram and his family, yeah, the rich people are subjugating us, but we've just got to try and work in that system and manipulate that system. Yes? Do the rich realize they're subjugating the rich? No? Do the poor realise that they're subjugating each other and they're actually making things worse? No, because they're too busy thinking, I'm just sucking up to the rich. So they don't recognise what Balram does. So he needed a character like this. He also needed a character that experienced events or a plot or other relationships that allowed this realisation to occur. If he never met Vitiligo Lips, would he have started to realise that he can do all these things? No. If Ashok hadn't moved to Delhi, would Ashok have really changed so quickly? No. If Pinky Madam hadn't hit the kid in the car and killed, would Balram have started to realise the family, his masters, weren't really thinking about him? No. If he hadn't gone to school, would he have ever had different names and had that educational experience? No. If the school inspector hadn't come, so all of these things suddenly give Balram access, so it's about access to the world of different types of thinking. He needed this access. And I've got a word up here that we haven't learnt before in purple. I'll underline it now in orange as well. Microcosms. Quickly look up microcosms, work out what they mean. Hopefully the internet's working. And what am I talking about here? Why did Adiga need to do this? Is it working for you? Okay. What do microcosms mean?
A community, place, or situation regardless.
Community, place, or situation regardless.
Well, as encapsulating in miniature the characteristics of something much larger.
Okay, so you've got this little group here, 5 or 6 of something, and we say that's representative of this. It's almost like a small scale model of something. Okay, so movies often do that, Star Wars especially, yes? They've got a big spaceship, no one actually has that. They make a little model, but they film it up close, they pretend it's a real, yes, so it's a scaled model. So microcosm, you can imagine it's like a scaled model, but of a community. Alright? So Home and Away is not a microcosm of Australian society. But you could say it's a microcosm of surfer culture or something like that, yes?
Right.
Yep.
So would the diary of Anne Frank be a microcosm of what was happening?
Yes, it could be representative of that, but it's not really a microcosm of that because you need lots of, but it could be representative of those things. Another, has anyone here read 12 Angry Men?
Yep.
I
swear every other school in Casey's done that except us.
Okay, our Year 10s are doing it now as well, but the 12 jurors, there's a bigot, there's a this, there's a that, and each of the 12 are representing different types of people in the society, so that jury room becomes a microcosm of American society. What were you going to say?
Read or watched?
Either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watched it.
The Henry Fonda version?
Not sure.
Well, don't watch the 12 Angry Men where they've decided to put women in there.
Oh, no,
Because it doesn't work, because it's written in the 1950s, and the whole idea is that women couldn't do certain things, and that, especially in America, the American Civil Rights Movement hadn't happened, so we've got to make it less sexist. Let's put 5 black people in there.
Was this a black and white movie?
Yes.
Isn't that colour one with
The colour ones, anything other than the black and white movie, is they're trying to be less sexist or less racist, and it's silly. Because what it's showing is that the original text is representing the society at the time in 1950s. And the American Civil Rights Movement hadn't happened, so you can't suddenly pretend that a whole group of people have always had rights by rewriting text to make everything balanced. Sometimes it's good to look at text and go, why are there only white men in that text? And there's a reason why, because at the time this was happening. Yeah.
Why is there a female toilet in the background of that?
Sorry, say it again.
Why is there a female toilet in the background of that juror's room?
Good question.
There is. It always confused me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just.
I never actually even looked at that, but now thank you for ruining my life. I'm going to think of that all the time now.
What?
Why is there a female toilet in the back of the jury room?
Maybe it was just.
Well, now yes, but actually they're not in the back. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We're off track. All right, let's go back to here. So he needed that to happen. He needed these. He needed someone to have access to these different worlds. If you think about it, in his town, in the village where he's grown up, there are landlords. There are people working for the landlords. Yes, we've got the 4 landlords. Blah blah blah. That is representative of that relationship in many villages all over the country. So that village of Laxmangar is a microcosm of what could happen elsewhere. When he moves to Delhi, Balram moves to Delhi, can someone give me an example of another microcosm? So we're saying that the village of Laxmangar was one microcosm representing the relationship of landlords and the families who are working for them to highlight this level of subjugation. But when he moves to Delhi, there's another microcosm. Nick, what did you want to try and say?
Well, I don't know if it's right, but like how all the drivers are in the basement.
Yes. All the drivers in the basement of the apartment building. That creates another microcosm. Okay, can anyone think of any other examples? Well, basically any sort of group situation he ends up being in that shows his experiences. The hospital, it's showing certain things. It's representative of many, many types of hospitals there. The school, representative of many, many types of schools there. Yep?
Do you know the kid that ran over?
Yes.
Is that a microcosm?
Not necessarily, but the life, because he moves then from the village to then just with the stork, the intensity of that relationship with that family of Ashok, Mukesh and the stork, that you could say is also a microcosm as well. You could say that relationship would be replicated in every other household with other masters and their servants. Yes?
Would the Premier of China be a microcosm?
No. He's just, that's another sort of device. It's a technique used. Okay, and we can talk more about that technique later on. So my answer, and this might be different to yours, but this is my answer to this question, the literal answer, that Adiga, he has not only created a narrative perspective, but he has also created the plot and the world. Yes, the device to go there. You think about, we talk about that Balram can recognize. How does he show this recognition? It's through the letters he writes. Yes? These letters allow him to write about the past with his current knowledge. So if you think back to when you were 5 years old, maybe something bad happened. Well, whenever something bad happened in your life, yes? You were experiencing it at that age. You had whatever knowledge you had at that age. When you think about it now, you can still remember the emotions of it, but you're now bringing extra thoughts to it. So sometimes I think about things that happened to me as a kid, but I bring adult perspective to it. Like, oh, they probably didn't mean it this way. Maybe they were stressed about that. Maybe this, maybe that. Yes? But as a child, it was the worst thing ever. But now I can bring different perspective to it. So this is what we call retrospective, looking back in the past, retrospective, and allows him to probably add extra stuff. So you think about when Balram is talking about when I was in the village, this, when he wasn't aware of how the family was treating him, but his letters are quite scathing about how he's been treated, yes? So he actually is able to critique his treatment when at the time he wasn't picking on the treatment at all. He said the treatment was quite nice, yes? So this, he's created not just a narrative perspective, but the fact that it is a retrospective narration. And the only way we do that is because they're in letters. So we get this truth. So that becomes my answer, that it's not just the narrative perspective, which is a retrospective narration, but he needed the format of letters to do that, and he also needed to create a whole world. So it's not just a perspective, it's the world he's created to allow this. And the implied answer we've already talked about, which is this stuff up here, that India was too busy trying to be British, that British subjugated the Indian. When they left, the Indians now are stuck in this colonial mindset. And if Indians wanted to get somewhere, if they just worked together, instead of against each other, they could actually be successful. So therefore, all aspects of society are subjugated. Yes? Does anyone have any questions? Is anyone like, I got lost on the board?
My brain's just hurting.
Okay, Pat. Yes, I can. All right. Put this at the front of your mind, not at the back of your book. Subscribe. You know you want to.